Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, on behalf of your Denver-based podcast crew, we appreciate you joining us for the Friendly Vibes.
Coming to you live from TSS Universidad on a very warm evening with one of my very good old friends, a very smart, well-rounded, well-spoken, intelligent, hard-working individual who just got back from a year teaching young people how to speak English in Hungary.
Yes, sir.
Connor Moore, let's give it up for him. No producers here today. It's just us.
Yeah. Thanks for the kind introduction, Sean.
Absolutely, man. So good to see you.
Likewise. I've been wanting to do this for a minute.
You brought me a great lesson and looks like some homework.
Yeah. Big.
From Colony to
homework.
Superpower, U.S. Foreign Relations since 1776 by Herring.
Yeah.
Alternative title, We Finna Be Hegemonic.
About to fuck it up.
Hegemony incoming.
Yeah. Too good.
Bro, what is good?
Nothing much. What about you?
Tell me a bit. Last time I saw you, you were a little nervous, it seemed, a little excited.
Oh, yeah.
You just didn't know what awaited you on the other side. Tell me a little bit, overview-wise, about the last year of your life.
Yeah. So I graduated from Wartburg May 23. And then originally the plan was to go into law school or to graduate school. And I was pretty burnt out of academics. So I decided to look for...
What did that?
Yeah.
However could have that happened?
Right? I wonder.
As a driven young white straight man in education from 19 to 23? That's not, I mean, come on.
Yeah. Can't happen.
There's no factors that point to a burnout.
No, not at all. But yeah, so looked for programs that would give me more like international experience. Everyone I talked to in multiple fields, they said the best possible thing you can do is go get international experience and go experience it at this age of 23, whatever, young. And just, it sort of gives you a whole new perspective and definitely is enticing to schools. Not that that's the whole reason of why I did it, but also just the excitement, like you said, like right before I left, definitely quite a bit anxious, worried, all those feelings, jumping into the unknown, not knowing what's going to happen. But that's also some of the most beautiful moments, right? And I look back even like transitioning to Wartburg and not knowing a person there.
I remember like pushing you.
Yeah.
To encouraging.
You
I was
did.
like, you're going to be way more uncomfortable if you do this path.
Yeah. Which is so important, healthy discomfort. And I'm so like, I've been reflecting on my time at Wartburg, and there's a lot of great memories, a lot of terrible memories, all the same, you know, and
you can learn from both of them.
Yes. Yeah. Hopefully,
Yeah. If you have the right.
With the intention.
Yes.
And how you frame things. But yeah, so I look back on a lot of these experiences where just like, you don't know anyone, or it is super uncomfortable. But looking back on it, like the excitement in it of like discovering something completely new. One of the big things they talk about in this program before I went in.
What's the name of the like organization that you traveled with?
Yeah, so I did it through the ELCA, the Lutheran Church of America. And the interesting thing is I'm not Lutheran. And that's
how loose the Lutherans are with acceptance.
The ELCA,
are they the one? Is Lutheran the like sect of Christianity where you can just like accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior in the last moment of your life and go to heaven? Is that the one, or is that Presbyterian? I don't even know. Let's move past it. Who cares?
Anyways,
we don't have production to look it up.
They definitely are. I really enjoyed the people I dealt with in the program. The people who run YAGM, it's called Young Adults in Global Mission, which initially, funny story, when I first saw this program, I met an alumni, and then I got the connection through a mentor, Marilyn Flockman, who is just such a phenomenal person, and she sits on the board at Wartburg.
Okay.
And she like... Ever since I was like 4 years old, she would like babysit me with my grandma and stuff. Crazy stuff.
Wow.
She went to Wartburg for her undergrad, and then she went to DU. And it's like I'm almost following exactly in her footsteps.
Wow.
And she's a phenomenal person.
Sounds like some good footsteps following.
Yes, yeah. And so basically, where was I?
You get
people
connected with this program through the Lutheran Church.
And then when I saw the name mission, when I saw the word mission, I remember like mentioning it to one of my top mentors, Dr. Billett, and both of us were like, like the word mission, for those who might not know, in general, it has a very negative context in history. So when you're talking about like evangelizing people or like the civilizing mission.
Typically the actions you take in line of God's will are almost always bad throughout history.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty hard to come up with examples. It's harder to come up with examples of good things than bad things when you do stuff saying, God wants me to do this.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
In general.
I mean, like one of the courses, probably my favorite course at Wartburg was with a guy named Dr. Walther, and it was colonialism and culture. Built the whole class himself, you know.
Wow.
One of the most phenomenal reading lineups I've ever had in a class.
Did you come into the class like, I'm not going to enjoy this?
No, I was actually excited about it. He's such a tough, like, professor.
Oh, that you knew this was just going to be super rigorous.
Yeah. And it was my final year at Wartburg, and
Gotcha.
I really excelled that final year in academics, and like things were just clicking in place. And like it just was mind-blowing to me, all the connections and everything between all classes, and it really translated into like just pure dominance in my academics. Like was not missing on one thing, you know. And
you're
and
in
there
the flow state.
Yeah, and like there's no question that it's going to be not perfect, because nothing's ever perfect,
Sure.
but like to the standards of these professors, it's well above average, right?
Yes.
And
which is tough.
yeah.
In their evaluative eyes. They've been there for a long time. They've seen a lot of good students.
Yeah. But
I had a business law professor tell me that I was like one of his better students throughout his time teaching. And I was like,
yeah,
I'll keep that on me. Thank you for that.
Those things are so important to like think back on, and
Yeah,
especially
dude.
when the days are shitty, dude. Times get tough.
When the hope of maybe owning a home, and
Yeah.
they say we're not going to own anything and we'll be happy about
Yeah.
it. See, I'm like, okay, I see the not owning stuff. Where's the happiness come in?
Yeah.
You
I
know?
mean, so my sister's fiance, Drew, I think it was him who told me one day, he was like, you should keep a folder of nice comments made about you, or like writings, or like all these different things, right? And when those tough days do come back, or even you're thinking about applying to a position or school or whatever, you can reflect back on what people think about you, right? And like, what are actually your strengths from, and hopefully an unbiased perspective.
Yeah.
Some credibility, right? And
yeah,
then
that's
you
a
can
really
use that.
good tip.
Yeah. So
I've unintentionally gotten like faced with a journal thrown in my face through this podcast.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because like I'll have, months of like, okay, why am I doing this? Quit.
Yeah.
Because that's the like little evil part of your brain fighting itself. That's that resistance
Yeah.
of the artwork,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
And that resistance is like a natural part of what you have to break through to get good strides or whatever.
Yes.
In whatever you're practicing in life.
100%. So, I mean, yeah, but I mean, I've been reflecting back on my time, and I'm just blown away. Like, I've been questioning, or like a little bit ago during this year abroad, I was questioning if, what if things were different? What if I went somewhere else? Or what if things lined up differently? But I keep coming back to the fact, and I mentioned this to another one of my mentors at Wartburg, that it was the people that made it all worth it.
Yeah.
Especially the teachers,
yes,
the administrators I built relationships with. Like, I look back on it, and it brings me like so much fulfillment and joy.
Yes.
And like,
you wouldn't get that at a big school.
No. Yeah.
No chance.
Yeah.
Even being you, right? Even going out of your way to go the extra mile and put yourself out in those uncomfortable situations, you're not going to get those type of, foundational relationships with the faculty and staff.
For sure.
That you're going to get at a small university.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, just looking back and just thinking about, especially the teachers who have shaped my thinking now and how much it's evolved. And the type of thinker I've become.
Did that change through teaching yourself? Because this was the first time in your life you taught other people, right?
Yeah, which is crazy too, and we can dive into that. But like,
did you tutor during like time at Wartburg at all, or anything like that?
No, not really. I remember like early on, I tried to do like a writing lab because I thought my writing was really strong, and in general, it is. I think.
I have a book for you.
Yeah,
I'm not kidding.
Yeah,
great book. Saw it from an Instagram reel.
Okay.
Deidre Makovsky, or
Okay.
I'm probably mispronouncing the name. She's a University of Chicago economist professor.
Do you have
Like,
the title?
It's called 36 Rules for Writing Well, or it's called like Writing for Economics or Economical Writing or something like that. Economical Writing by Deidre. Diedre, I think is her first name.
Diedre.
Deidre,
Okay.
I think.
I'll take a peek.
But yeah, I'll show you the cover while you're here. But that book is just 36 short rules for writing. I picked up it because I was like, I'm not writing academically anymore, but I am trying to write better because I'm writing jokes, I'm writing bits, and I am trying to learn to write better.
Yeah.
Shit, if this person can write economics and be respected by other like economists for being such an entertaining writer in the field that's so dismal, like I'm sure there's something I can take away from this for stand up, and it's already been. I already really enjoy it.
There's one thing I want to mention.
Please, sorry for cutting.
No, you're good. Just later on, if you remember, I remember Dr. Walther. He had a really interesting thing to say about comedians. But
it's good to now. Do it now. Why not?
Right now?
Yeah,
all
we
right.
got no. There's no route. We can free flow.
One day we were talking about like sarcasm in class, and he thought, and of course I'm paraphrasing. So, he was basically saying that sarcasm is potentially some of the highest level of intelligence. And so he was mentioning all these comedians. He's like, I truly think comedians are some of the best critical thinkers and like smartest people.
Yeah.
And like sarcasm is a hard thing to get.
Well, the
like,
thing
for a
about
lot of
sarcasm
people
that I've had to change is my sarcasm was so refined. And you know this because you were someone that helped me refine it.
Yeah.
I was getting so good at sarcasm after senior year of high school that I had to, throughout college, change.
Yeah.
For the better, because you couldn't discern my sarcasm from real statements.
Well, I mean, to be honest,
and it's not good. There's a point where like that's not applicably. You can't work with other people like that.
I mean, I will say, throughout our relationship, there have been multiple instances, and it's probably just me being a dunce or whatever, not as smart, but like, I can think back to some moments where you are being sarcastic and I didn't even pick up on it. And I was like confused, but then I understood.
You not picking up on it is like, oh, if Connor can't get the sarcasm, clearly it's not good enough for the general populace.
I don't know about it.
I don't know, whatever. But
so
like Norm Macdonald, for example, his tone and delivery, you don't know whether anything's true or not.
Yeah.
And it borders on like his moth bit that's like 3 minutes long. And it's a, joke about a moth flying into a light. And like a podiatrist's office, like the light was on. And that's why the moth came to the podiatrist's office is the joke. And it could be that short, but it's 3 minutes because it's him, and the delivery and the sarcasm throughout is just... It keeps you engaged with life. I've found comedy for me is like that's the richness of the human experience.
Yeah, I mean that's something to I'm trying to get more balance in. Like during undergrad, I really struggled enjoying myself, especially at the end.
Tell me about it.
And like even watching, dumb, silly, funny movies that a lot of my friends really enjoyed, but I found no substance in it. And that's like, to me,
you were like getting too
bad
heavy.
Perspective.
Yeah. And it's you know what? Honestly, I found myself in this way in my job where I was working a day job, waking up at 6, going to work, getting home, too tired to do much, going to bed, waking up, doing it again, feeling really like meaningless, feeling like you're slipping into this void of like, oh, this is how people become NPCs.
Yeah.
And it took me consciously like, no, you're going to get a second job as a door guy at a comedy club because you said you were going to do it in college when you worked at a comedy club there. And this is going to light like life. It needs to reinvigorate the spark that you're keeping alive with the pod or whatever.
Yeah.
It's so easy.
Yeah.
It's really easy to slip as people
for sure.
away from either into bitterness, into egotism, into victim mindset. Dude, so many people, especially, you grind at comedy you're supposed to grind for a decade and a half with no money, period.
Yeah.
Like that's just how it works.
Tough industry, dude. Yeah. Tough industry. And
and like law is the same way, right? Like you better get a clerkship with the one judge that's going to get you that next position, because if you want to be on the federal justice department, whatever, that's the only track. And if you miss that first clerkship, forget about it.
Yeah. Good luck for higher pedigree things.
Yes.
But back to the sarcasm too. Thinking about like, even after that comment, and now as we talk, like thinking back to like moments where I've seen professors somewhat you could tell kids got pissed, right? Or students did. And like, there would be instances where, and I respect this so much, I'm not going to name names, but like certain professors, utmost respect is when an issue has arisen about them and a student is like ticked off or offended or whatever it might be, they mention it in class. They don't name names, but they go out of their way to say, I'm going to be better, like things like that. Or like, I'm sorry if you didn't understand what I was getting at. Like that to me, I don't know. I'm going on another point, but
even to go off of, their egotism,
yeah,
and they're maybe demonstratable.
They humble themselves.
Yes.
And like, but it's interesting because like there are so many moments, especially in political science and history, depending on the teacher, where like they'll make sarcastic comments and a lot of students don't pick up on it or they don't understand the person, but these people are so bright and intelligent.
Yes.
And they don't think they're doing like,
my econ prof was like this, Mickey Wu. He
Mhm.
was there for 30 some years when I got there.
Mhm.
Nobody wanted to take his classes because he taught all his classes he could at 8 a.m.
Yeah.
Right? And it
Yeah.
was 3 tests, no homework. I don't give a you better do the homework, but I don't give a shit about it.
Yeah.
Like you're doing 3 tests, that's it.
Yeah.
And this dude at 8 a.m. would just go 3 boards wide as quick as he can write and as quick as he could be sarcastic, squeezing in those little liners. And I went through my shit the other week and I found an old notebook.
Mm-hmm.
Senior year, this is the last year I got last year I got a class with him before he retired. I started to take notes of his quotes in the margins.
Wow.
Because
Yeah.
I was like, I'd taken 5 classes at this point. I was like, I love this dude. He says so many funny things that everybody in his class misses. And I have all of these quotes from him in the margins, and they made me laugh going back at him now.
Dude, I did something similar towards the ending of my career there. I would literally be jotting down whatever they might mention that really struck, or about a book, or like an argument they didn't. And like, this is where a lot of students, I think there could be like a level where they don't get to
This
the
is
next
the skill
part.
issue thing.
Or they just haven't considered it, right? Like,
Skill issue.
yeah, skill issue, yeah. But like,
Semantics.
if you can understand certain things and then integrate it into your work.
My favorite
Bingo.
professor, I took a class that I, didn't really think I would need, that most people just took because they were academic athletes. They're football players that needed to take this class for business credit.
Yeah.
Human resource management.
Yeah.
Thought I would fucking hate this class.
Yeah.
The professor is this dude from Vietnam, Vinh Nguyen. And it turns out that he's not talking about the textbook.
Yeah.
No, he's talking about people. And he's like giving you the most profound Zen Buddhist perspectives on people and business and what really matters about how to manage people and resources.
Yeah.
And it 95% of the class doesn't give this guy the time of day or respect or even listen to him. They're on their computers texting, whatever. And this dude's just prophesizing and laying out wisdom every fucking day. If you're willing to come to class, you're just soaking up the wisdom. I would go to coffee with him and he'd say things like, look at the tree. What is the tree? What are the branches? What is the leaves? Why are the leaves? And like shit like and it's just hidden in plain sight. And those only accessible to the people that have the little wherewithal to say, holy shit, this isn't about fucking human resource management.
Literally.
This is about all of it.
Yeah. Or they're just super intentional. I've been thinking a lot about necessarily, I feel like from a lot of my background in education, it mostly negative, really, really hated school. Almost didn't make it past certain points, told terrible things, by my teachers to me. I had one teacher at Monarch tell me that I should consider something else than higher education when I was in middle school. And I was number one, now looking back on it, I'm like, what are you doing talking to a student that way?
You should write a Biggie song to that teacher that told me I never amount to nothing and that higher education was not an option for me.
Yeah. But this is an interesting point, and it kind of I think it explains a lot about me now, current day. So, hated school despise school. Never, of course, it's not just teachers. A large portion was me not trying, right? And me not caring. And then, because it can't all be the teacher, right? But then when high school came around, I remember I was pissed off about a lot of different things that happened to my family, or like images of them. And I was like, you know what, screw it. I'm going to crush it here, right? I'm going to like prove everyone wrong. Very like, and a lot of people kind of hoist this mentality up, I think, proving others wrong, whatever. It can be helpful for sure, but it's a very negative mind state, and it honestly enslaves you.
It's an us versus them foundational state.
It can get you big places for sure, but it's now looking back on it, that perspective, I crushed high school in my opinion. I did really well. And then at Wartburg, it wasn't until probably junior year, that started to really change. And I got like these specific professors and people in my life, and going through a lot and having them, advise me or guide me or teach me. And it really changed my perspective on education from something negative or proving a means to prove something wrong or to get something done, to a very positive thing where it's a beautiful thing being able to learn with others in a classroom. I think I genuinely mean this. I think education and school is like a religion for me. I would equate it to. Like, it's sacred is what I mean. And like the classroom is a sacred place.
But that's civil discourse sounds like a key foundational part.
Yeah.
Okay.
Of course.
If you don't have the students sharing their ideas with each other, the learning isn't happening.
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah. And I hope people at one point in their life get a certain professor or teacher who really understands how to, I don't know, not hammer the students, but to like, I don't know how to explain it necessarily right now, but there are a lot of teachers, and I understand, and I've witnessed it, especially this last year, like being in the teachers' lounge with them, seeing the issues they face in Hungary. And
gotta be hungry over there,
dude.
Sorry,
had to.
It's a layup.
Had to with the Hungary jokes. No, but like seeing the lack of support, the amount of time they put in, the lack of pay, right? And I can see how over years that it's the same thing in the U.S. It absolutely dries out the teacher. It burns them out, and it probably makes their temper much shorter than it naturally was, right? And there's not that intention anymore because they're getting overworked, right?
Yeah.
And I don't want to be too critical of teachers now, just seeing them, the ones I saw. Like, of course, there were teachers I saw and like methods I saw that I disagree with.
Sure.
And I never mentioned it, of course, but like, there are things that I noted from my perspective, not that I'm saying they're right or wrong. I'm just saying this is what I observed. And there are things where I was like, damn, like, that's not necessarily the best. You should try to connect, especially I wanted to go into classes because, of course, all these students, I think they liked me a lot. And like, especially because it's a young person coming in and they're there to experience something as well. But also, they don't have the full capacity of teaching and grading and whatever comes with it, right? But it is like the way you interact with a student and the way you talk with them or the way you back them down off of negativity, or like, because I really wanted to be in the classrooms. They kept putting me in the advanced ones, of course, like any school would with this, an American coming in and they want a native speaker talking with them. But I requested multiple times. I was like, give me like the lower classes because they rank them. And I was like, I want to go in there and share my experiences with school with them. And I could tell with a few students, it seemed from, how we interacted that they were reconsidering some things, but who knows? Anyways,
but the power, your lens of the pedagogical, is that right?
It sounds right. It's like
pedagogy or whatever.
It's a
the
tough
worst word to pronounce.
Oh my
I thought
God.
hegemony was hard.
Pathological?
Yeah, pathological. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Whatever.
Yeah.
Your framework of how to teach a student
Mm-hmm.
and your teaching style and approach to the knowledge basis game
Yeah.
and the learning game has changed.
Yeah.
And it seems like you have a much more generous lens for people's shortcomings in the moment.
Yeah, for sure.
And like you don't get to that outcome through anything but putting yourself in an uncomfortable situation.
Yeah.
Like you don't get to break free of the mold of whatever you see as the preconception of the world. Like, for example, my preconception about politics when I left Monarch, very different than when I leave college because I interact with people from places like St. Louis and Chicago that grew up around communities that I didn't even fucking have any clue about and really didn't get. And then being put in those uncomfortable situations and being faced with these uncomfortable things of, oh, you don't understand that lots of the country isn't like how you grew up and people aren't all like you. And these differences and diversities are important parts of what make America what it is.
Yeah.
I mean,
that exposure is so critical. And it's really like driving those students who are at, not necessarily, I wouldn't say at risk, but there are some students who are at risk, right? And you're not, I guess, applying certain resources you might have to the same classes. Yeah, all classes, right? And giving those students still the opportunity to do it. Or the opportunity, the chance to interact.
Because if you're being really like strategic or if you were being completely like Keynesian about it, you would say we should distribute most of our money to the best students, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Because the outcomes that we will get as society, the poorer students will be better off if we give the money to the rich students than if we gave it to the poor students, because the societal outcomes will be better giving the money to the rich in skill students.
Yeah, for sure.
Versus the at-risk students.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean,
that's why you can't be
think about test scores and
that's the word I was like, utilitarian. You can't be utilitarian about
Mills.
everything in life. Millsian, yeah. You can't be very, cut and dry with columns and debits and credits of life. There is no fucking balance sheet for life.
Well, I mean, if we're going deeper, like, because I do want to finish my point about the program. Please. No, you're good, but this is great conversation. Like, if you look at property taxes that go into schools and funding, it's just toxic, disgusting, in my opinion. And then, like, the talented and gifted programs that I remember, and looking at certain students who, they're in, and probably there's great benefits to having something like that. But definitely thinking about just like trying to apply as much opportunity to those classes you at least have to give the chance. The opportunity. Hopefully, of course, I might be idealistic saying this, right?
Right, but you would hope that the opportunity
you would hope we're trying to make that effort regardless. I've been thinking a lot about idealism and whatnot. And
where do you fall? Are you pretty idealistic?
I mean, I like to think I am.
More so than you used to be?
I don't know. I don't know. I'd have to think about that.
It's a tough way to think about it.
I would say I'm actually in certain topics, I'm very pragmatic and cutthroat about things. So like international relations, I definitely I've been reading things on like offensive and defensive realism and theories like that, which we can get into, but still formulating complete thoughts. And even my final year at Wartburg, I had a phenomenal teacher, Dr. Helgevold, who taught in religion, but she did a additional curriculum for me to check off a religion requirement for me.
Wow.
Where we just and I mean, you can't, like, these teachers who go the extra distance and they're not even getting paid for it, but they sat down with the student and said, you know what? Yeah, you can come in for an hour and a half, 2 hours, come talk with me and we'll check this off, get it approved. But of course they create curriculum with you. Like, I did that on multiple occasions with multiple professors. So blessed that they even agreed to do it. But it's teachers like that, like, oh my God, game changing. And at the beginning of that that extracurricula, she was like, what do you want to get out of this? Because we were talking about, we were playing into international relations and like the US and applying religion to it and like really philosophical lenses. So cool. And I told her at the time, and looking back on it, I was like, damn, that was pretty reflective for me at the time. Like, I told her, honestly, I'm so confused right now. Like, the more I'm learning, the less I feel that I actually know, which is of course that is. And
which
and
is
then
the paradox of knowledge.
And then I told her, I'm like, I'm questioning everything I have believed in my life.
Yeah.
And I said, I couldn't definitively tell you where I stand on many issues right now. And so I said, maybe we can start to refine that. And I think she loved that, right? And I love that.
The purpose was to re-examine the political lens at which you saw the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
Which was amazing.
Yeah. And a valuable time in your life to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
What a valuable time in your life to think that you get that power, which everybody does, but most people don't take the time to even think they have the power to do.
The best memories I have probably to date are like within education are just sitting down in a professor's office and just talking with them about everything and anything, right? And like just like Dr. Billet, oh my God, just spent hours with him, and thank God he did that, because I was probably bugging the shit out of him, you know?
Right.
And he made jokes about it all the time. He was like to his secretary, "Don't let him in," you know, like. But he really he went to bat for me on so many occasions. And but anyways, where was I going with this? It's just looking at how impactful one person or one teacher. Hopefully, the student has the intention at some point, but there can be a pivotal point where certain people really show you how much you're probably missing, you know, or like just so many different perspectives. And like the amount of reading I did in the final 2 years, just exponential, you know?
And then you got to see this from the other side now and over this last year. And it's really sunk in the power of teaching them, seeing it from both sides.
So specifically watching the elementary teachers at this school, just how tired they were. Like, I sympathize, I should say, fully with that. Like, I can understand how stressful it is for the low pay. I mean, in Hungary, it's atrocious. It's, blanking the word. But anyways,
like poverty. Like, it's a poverty job.
Yeah, they need a second job for sure. And on top of everything. And it's not disgusting is a word for it in society, because same thing's happening in the US, not just in Hungary. But when I was in those certain classes, oh my God, middle school is so tough to deal with those students.
Yes. And
like, I can understand how the temper definitely gets lowered as those years go on, your ability to put up with things. And but those were all, especially those classes, 7th and 8th grade, were the students who hit a point where they were starting to look at school how I did, of like, this shit sucks, you know? And like very negative. And of course that's probably natural for most in that age group.
Right.
But like, they really, and I tried to express my stories to them and whatnot, but maybe it's just an age thing. But it was interesting to experience that. So, and I guess moving on, if we cap the story on Yagam, when I saw the word mission, right, when we were talking about that, like, we were both kind of like, oh, I don't know if you should do this. And then number 2, the ethical consideration is, do your principles really align with that program, right? And people have different perspectives of like, well, if you can impact and make a net positive whatever on somewhere or someone, whatever it might be, then you can bend those principles a bit to fit. Now,
it's a quick path to a Nazi sympathization.
Now it depends on how you look at it, right? And your intention in it. But upon reviewing like everything about this program, and I dove into it, I really appreciated a lot of what they were saying about mission. Like, the ELCA is very thoughtful.
Like the lens at which they look at the mission is.
And like how they expressed about colonialism and those eras. And like, I wrote that in my cover letter, and I flat out told them too, I was like, I'm not Lutheran, you know, and they still, I told them though, my principles align and I expressed all these different things. And the amazing thing about this program is it's really not, and I just sent you the newsletters that I wrote up. I don't know if you got the email. It was earlier today, but I don't know how I didn't have you on my email list for this. I feel super bad.
I thought I even gave you my email for that. That's fine.
Maybe, yeah. I don't know. Okay. But now you have them. All 6 of them are there.
Hell
but
yeah.
In it, it's a really intentional and thoughtful program in that it's really not about me, you know? Like, of course, people will go and do these year abroads, and it's like, oh, gonna go find myself, right? And maybe they do. That's all power to them. But this is much more about what they call, their terminology, mutual accompaniment. So walking in relation with others and experiencing one another. I'm not there to, this is
what I do in the podcast every single week, by the way. It seriously is. It's my goal of the podcast is mutual accompaniment. I had a guy from Philly tell me about how his mom went missing for 3 months before he informed the authorities, and how each of his siblings had been given a little bit of information, but not all of it, because that made sure each of them was valuable as a team member when their mom left.
Holy shit.
And like, you know, I get a little bit of a dose of mutual admiration walking through that
understanding.
Life, a mutual understanding. You know, that's awesome.
Yeah. And it's what the world needs, like young people getting exposure. And unfortunately, a lot of people in Europe and around the world, of course, Europe has more opportunity, but if we're looking at from that worldview, but like a lot of these Hungarians will never have the opportunity to come over here and experience something like that. I hope to God they do. I told all of them, I was like, you should do something like this, no matter what, even if it's in another country in Europe, like go do it, go do Erasmus through the EU. But, so it's not about like, of course I hope I had impact, right? Like, of course I think I brought some talent, and I know they were very grateful for what I did, but really they didn't need me at all, right? Maybe it helped some of them take the load off a bit, because I was allowed, like the amazing thing about my experiences from early on, teachers saw who I was and they saw how I was interacting with students, and probably the level of education and understanding I had, that they were like, okay, like
it's I'm gonna waste time not giving you opportunities.
Yeah, but I don't know if this has ever been. What's been told is this hasn't been done in at least that site location, or even the Central Europe group. But no volunteer has ever been allowed to teach by themselves in classrooms.
Oh, that's so cool.
I got to this one dude, Patty, who's one of my favorites. He was like, hey, like even after like 2 weeks, he was like, you want to just do these classes on your own? Now, of course, some of them are getting breaks, and thank God I can like assist in that. But he was like, yeah, like most of the classes, teachers were just like carte blanche, go teach them what you want. Go do. They even like at one point early on,
anything you teach them,
they
will
were
be valuable.
Even originally they showed me, textbook, like what they would prefer, but then at one point they were just like, do what you think is best.
Wow.
So then I got to like develop my own things and do things like that, which was cool. But
and you didn't have any experience developing those, so you get to like learn by doing.
Yeah.
Kenneth Arrow.
Yeah, it was great.
Best way to do things.
Yeah. But I mean, the point though of the program, which I really liked, is
point. No.
I can talk, bro.
No, bro, we're having it. This is what the show's about. It's talking, having a good time.
Yeah, but basically,
you feel like you're like on CNN here, and we need to cut away to a Pfizer commercial. Right? There's no advertisers, man. We can talk as long as you want.
One day, we're gonna get there.
We don't know, because then they'll try to make me, say certain things a certain way, and I don't care.
Yeah.
No.
But. No,
you probably haven't even seen the cover art. Here's a quick aside before you get to the point. Have I showed you the cover art for Things Trump Knows Best?
No.
I told you about this idea from 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Remember, you were one of the first people I told this idea about.
Yeah.
Because I told you about the book, Reasons to Vote for Democrats.
Just like what, yeah.
And I'm like, why can't we make money on the other side of this?
Literally.
Okay.
The 100 pages, one line.
So help me bring this to market, because I already commissioned an artist and a cover, and I've got it, like, the manuscript done.
That is fucking
amazing.
Isn't that
perfect? Zoom in on the hands.
Dude, oh my God.
And all I told her was, I gave her a picture of an astronaut holding a flag, and I said, I want this, but with Trump, and make the hands small. And that's all I said. And that's what she did.
And then
Isn't that perfect? Isn't
I
that
wish I
McConaughey-
could read this book.
It's the best quote for the cover, is it not?
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I am working 60 hours a week and doing a pod and all this other stuff and trying to do stand up.
Yeah.
This shit's got to get to market in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Or we're going to miss the window.
Yeah. You need to do it.
I'll cut you in whatever you need to to make this happen.
I'm down.
Okay.
I mean, I wonder if...
Cut Christian in too, it's fine.
Yeah.
I just need driven people. At this point, I can't bring it to market and with my own capacity, so I need to bring in other people.
Yeah.
And it's super
let's
easy.
talk
I've already done all the legwork.
Yeah. That's amazing.
So
yeah.
So the point of teaching.
The point.
And not blank books. Like
No, I guess just about like the program in general. Like it's about mutual accompaniment but like we said, like creating that understanding hopefully between two parties and like realizing the differences, right? And like those things are beautiful and on top of it, hoping like what I said in my last newsletter is, of course, it's sort of idealistic, but the way things need to change, and I talked a lot about this in like political science at Wartburg too, is like, where do you actually, are we doomed? Like, is it too late, right?
No.
And no, like we can't think that way.
That's
but
an alarmist take. I
but
said
also,
it about horse poop in the 1800s in New York City. I
Yeah.
refuse to think that that's a good take.
Yeah, but I mean, like,
But you hear it all the time.
the most meaningful impact, I think, for changing society is with the youth.
Mm.
And
That's
if you
why
can
the
get
gays
into
are targeting the kids.
if you can get into education, like that is the most foundational important job, in my opinion.
That's why the Rockefellers bought out the U.S. Education Department.
Yeah?
Yeah, dude. That's why they set it up the way they did, because they wanted useful cogs for their fucking factories. Are you kidding me? Yes, it's demonstrated through literature.
Yeah.
The American pedagogical system is set up to be factory workers.
Yeah. It is. I remember.
I mean, it's like, this is established.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
This is not a tinfoil hat take from Sean. This is a true thing. They bought the education system in the United States.
Yeah. But like, yeah, it's just,
But
to change society, it's through the youth.
They're right in buying the education system in that the way to get people is through the youth. You know, people get beaten out and tired of being people by the age 35.
Yeah.
And they're not going to wake up outside of their routine and go make some change in the world. Guess what? They fucking aren't.
No.
They aren't.
No.
They don't.
Those built up political behavior and your socialization, it can be changed, but it's tough.
So much more difficult. And it's more radical usually if you do it at a later stage.
Oh, yeah. For sure.
It's very tough to have a balanced, pragmatic perspective politically and have it be a changed perspective after the age 35.
Yeah.
It's very unlikely.
Yeah.
But you can buy into fascism past 35.
Yeah.
I mean, that's happened. There are historical examples of that.
No, I mean, I'm reading a book. It's like 2,000 pages by William Schreier.
Oh, that's funny. This one's
800, 900, somewhere around there.
2,000? It's one book?
Yeah, I don't have the actual,
It would be kind of funny to do like a things Trump knows best for Republicans and just include quotes on each of the topics from Trump. So it's like, oh no, we'll put the jokes in there for you because you can handle them. Like that's the bit.
Yeah. No,
also, I've got some other good ones like things Joe Biden knows was another one I was working on.
Okay.
But blank on pages.
Yeah.
But the one I can like, if I wanted to like suicide by Clintons, it's like suicide by police, but the Clintons take you up. It's friends of the Clintons that haven't died by suicide. Blank on pages. So whenever I want to go out, I've got that in the back pocket.
This is the best, dude. Just minimal work for.
Also, there's a whole market for it because think about it. It's a physical meme.
Yeah,
and we have a whole generation of meme buyers,
and they would love that.
And they would love shit like this.
Yeah. No, so it's get on that.
But like both sides is what it comes down to.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason ideas like this come is because I, grew up in a conservative family, but went to public school in Boulder, Colorado.
Yeah. And,
I'd come home to the dinner table ready to, argue with my parents about what their take was about X.
Yeah.
And that engaging with the world around me, that's just made me into whatever the fuck this is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And wanting to talk to strangers and old friends on the show for long form conversations.
Yeah.
Just to share in the human experience.
It's amazing. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, dude. Consciousness is cool.
Yeah.
Thank goodness we have it.
Yeah.
So I want to ask, do you think it's tough to, compare, but do you think your lens of humanity, do you think you saw people as more different than one another, or like is your view that people are more unified or more different and diverse before versus after teaching in Hungary?
I would say the thing that's striking is like there's so much common ground between all of us.
Yeah.
And when we think about the differences, especially when we think about like nationalism, for instance, and how much it can divide people. And I just read Sapiens by Harari.
Mm-hmm.
A phenomenal book. And
you're an Obama shill.
Yeah.
Fucker. He's changed.
Has he?
You.
Oh.
No, you're the
stop.
one who's changed. You're reading Michelle Obama's book list now. Jesus Christ.
Oh, is it?
No, I mean, it's a good book.
It is a good book. Yeah.
I'm just fucking around. I'm a comedian after all.
Yeah.
No, it's a great book, but
no, it is. But
there's some like undercutting demographical issues or challenges presented from the other side of
for sure
writers like Naval.
Yeah. He's the thing I like a lot about the book too is it's such a easy read for anyone. Like it's the way someone writes, not to change what your question was, but like the way someone writes is really interesting. And like, especially academic people, like higher education, and typically you get this academic jargon, right? And like just people on their high horse because they think they're brilliant. They probably are brilliant, but it's not accessible to people. Even like court opinions from the Supreme Court, things like that. And then when you read something like Harari, in my opinion, where they take some things that are actually, it's pretty philosophical in the book, and they dial it down to like a relatively
palpable.
Yeah. That's a great way.
They try to make it palpable for the commoner.
Yes.
For the layperson.
Yeah. For sure.
You don't have to have any advanced environmental development or
experience within the field.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
and you can engage with it. And I like his writing because he does get in depth on issues or topics I don't know nothing about. So I can get a ton of interest in areas where I want to explore more.
Yeah.
Like, I could read a whole book about this one subsect of our history as humans.
Mm-hmm. It's great.
I don't even know that interests me type of thing before. Yeah.
And he covers so much ground in such a short amount of space. Is that in a relatively good manner?
Is that how the type of writing you like is like large?
It depends.
Like overarching.
I wouldn't say I prefer one or the other.
Do you typically like a 30,000 foot view or being put in the shoes of one person? Because there is typically like you kind of from a spectrum, right?
Yeah. I would say lately it definitely the more niche and narrow focus for sure.
What's a narrow focus book that you've read that's been interesting to you over the last year?
Oh boy. Well, right now I'm reading The Tragedy of Great Power Politics by
this the
John
2000
Mersheimer. Yeah.
Wow.
And he's considered one of the greatest political scientists in America right now. He's phenomenal.
I know his name. Which,
you know his name.
I don't know many political scientists.
No, and he brilliant. Like that's definitely a book where it's not for the common reader. Like you got to know some terms for sure. But he does dial it down. He even says, "I do want people to have the opportunity to not completely get lost, but maybe they need to search up
words." Is there multiple volumes or is it one book?
No. This book. So I'm reading like the one that's 2000 is on the rise and fall of the Third Reich by Schreier, and it's a seminal work in it, and it's fascinating to see how Hitler came to power in the Nazi Party. How many moments in history for him could have flipped slightly the other way, and we would not have experienced what we did. Like multiple moments in foreign policy where Great Britain and France should have came in and clocked him when he was going into the Sudetenland or the Rhine. Is it the Rhine?
The Rhineland.
Yeah. When he went into that, and when those two major powers in the region should have immediately checked him and told him. And what Mersheimer says is they should have immediately what you would call balancing in international relations. So you try to balance the power again by being very aggressive and not backing down and doing it as yourself, as opposed to like buck passing or what you would call bloodletting or appeasement, which appeasement is with Hitler.
Oh, that's what caused all the problems.
Mostly, yeah. And it's, I mean...
See, this all sounds like arguments for the Palestinian state to me, truly. Like, all of this sounds like arguments for, hey, let's stop letting Israel do these horrible things.
Yeah.
Like, hey, can we stop? Yeah. Like, can we just hard check these fuckers in the face?
Yeah.
Like, can we just hard check the fuck out of these dudes?
So
for real, because the shit they're doing to babies and children is horrific.
No, I know.
Like, can we stop pretending that
it's fucked up?
No, like, I mean, are we going to wake up and acknowledge that we're like letting Hitler happen right now?
Yeah.
Or are we going to just keep?
Yeah.
I mean, it's very frustrating for me to hear the story.
Full blown genocide. And I watched or I listened to probably half of with Tala. I love what he's doing.
Yeah, dude. I mean,
like,
just to hear perspective of
respect someone who goes out of their way to like, even, you never know how much impact that can have, but it's important to even make the effort. You know what I mean?
I found it interesting that most of the concentrated protests were at, like, I saw a distribution of data over, you know, how much does the tuition of the place cost versus how much did they fund or encourage the protesting for Palestine? And it's very, very correlated statistically between you having a very expensive tuition price and you like to protest.
Yeah.
And okay, there's an issue.
Yeah.
Like, I have an issue with the AIPAC having a person assigned to every single one of our supposed representative government officials.
Yeah.
Huge problem. Like, hard check these fuckers in the face now before we have a real problem on a global scale. These people are going to start a global war.
Yeah. So this is a interesting topic. I mean, like, so Mersheimer, he just did a lecture on this and on YouTube. I'll send it to you.
I should check that out, yeah.
He makes the argument that Israel is in dire straits right now.
Yeah.
With the decisions they make, 100%.
I think so too.
I won't do his argument justice, but there are 4 methods that could be taken, and I don't remember all of them, but the method they're taking is ethnic cleansing. They need to do that, and I'm talking pragmatically, not like this is okay.
Yeah, they're trying to cleanse anyone that disagrees with their perspective away from their system.
But how deep
society.
How deep they've gone into it now, they need to get the job done for Israel's sake.
And so that sounds a lot like the Third Reich to me in the middle of it. Does it not? Can we not draw complete lines
100%. And people don't like, and I just love this about what Tal is doing on like Instagram and everything I'm seeing, like just advocacy, but like,
I love how generous he is with his opinion is that the people that aren't on the side of Palestine just haven't seen the videos.
Yeah. And
that if I showed you the videos, I have enough belief in your humanhood that you would come around to realizing how fucked up this situation is. And that's way more of a generous perspective than I would have 100%. From his perspective.
Yeah. It's all about that temperament of talking to someone who... And this is something I've been thinking a lot about too. Like, where's the line where you cut it off and it's no longer pragmatic for yourself to be talking to someone about something? And there are those people in lines.
Oh, yeah.
And
I should probably shut up a lot of the time.
But I mean, like, there are the completely ignorant people who are just wound up on one or the other side.
Yes.
And just, you cannot... It's just a waste of time at some point.
Yes.
Like, where does that cost-benefit analysis come in?
Yes.
That's what I've been thinking about.
That's so tough. How do you strike that balance?
How do you not?
How do you know? How do you recognize? And how do you take the steps to be like, I'm not wasting my time with you?
Yeah. I'm sure there's some good academics on it.
Books. I mean, you want to know the book I'd recommend for that? The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck.
Really?
Yeah.
I have it on my reading list.
I honestly think that book would be good for that purpose. Because I think most people think other people are thinking about them. And most times people are so wrapped up in their own heads. Mm-hmm. Like, we should afford a lot more grace to other people.
Yeah.
Just looking at our own minds and selves.
Yeah.
And we don't do it.
Yeah.
So.
No. So, but back to the Israeli-Palestine conflict. I mean,
in the context of this book, the Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, because I couldn't help but, as you're telling me about this, think of the current application of what's happening there. Like,
for sure.
And not trying to be an asshole about it or anything like that. It's just, it's hard for me not to see this aggressing force with backing and money and all that. Like, it's going to get out of control, y'all.
Yeah.
Like, it's so clear.
I don't necessarily think, and once again, pragmatic lens, like, cut dry. I don't necessarily think it's in the U.S. interest anymore to, at least from the lectures I've seen, it's not necessary anymore for the U.S. to necessarily have certain regions, like in the Middle East with Israel. Not, and of course, when you talk to a religious, religious, they're like, America's going to fall once they leave Israel and that alliance, like any nation who stands against that passage. Yeah. But anyways,
I think we should, if you want my opinion, but
yeah. Oh my God. But so yeah, no,
get the people out there first.
Yeah,
it's kind of like Sam Kinnison's book about like, hey, you know, we've been driving out here every week to bring you the food, and we just wanted we brought U-Haul trucks so we can get you to move where the fucking food is.
Yeah,
and it's like, no, but get the people out first.
Yeah.
No, so but it's very frustrating to think that United States taxpayer resources are getting sent from oligarchical bureaucrats to genocidal dictatorships.
Right. And it's
and war groups.
Right now, if you look at the current landscape of the establishment, it's both parties.
That's the thing that in the last 4 years I come around to is like this whole thing is so.
It's only the young ones, at least in the Democrat side, who are gonna like want to completely upend what Harris is gonna do in Israel, right? And what Biden is doing and what Trump will do. Same policy, same thing. And then
also I noticed that Kamala's like, yeah, I want to build a border wall. I'm like, hey, come on now. We really cannot say that we're going to put money, like, she's like, we'll put hundreds of $1 millions into a border wall. Hang on. 4 or 5 years ago, you said this was fucking the most racist thing you've ever heard. Just American. I do think that as we continue to ostracize ourselves with these little pocket computers, as general American populace becomes dumber and dumber and dumber through scrolling, their memory becomes worse, and their ability to be manipulated by propaganda, by the media, by their own leaders becomes so much easier.
Dude, it's scary.
That's terrifying.
It's terrifying what it's happening, especially even in the classrooms. We talked about this with teachers, like the TikTok brain, whatever you might want to call it, right? The short attention span, so hard to keep, especially those middle schoolers who are just now probably getting access to electronics and to social medias, right?
Boy, you wish they're getting at 3, Connor.
Yeah, that's true. But in Hungary, it seems, I don't know. I might be wrong. Anyways, but back to, so Mearsheimer, he basically, Israel's dug a hole for itself. The previous leader before Netanyahu, he pulled out of Gaza.
Yeah.
Strategically. Not because he doesn't hate them. He hates them. But he pulled out because it's a Pandora's box for what could occur.
Bingo.
And
he was more pragmatic.
And then
about leadership of the country.
Yeah.
And like insurance. Yeah. I don't know. It's a tough game to play when you have your entire state tied up in your religion.
Yeah. There was one person, I'll say relative, a member in the family, who I was talking with. And shortly after the October 7th and the invasion of Gaza, right? And by the way, one of my dear friends in the Yagam program, his name's Braden, he was originally placed in Jerusalem, West Bank.
Oh my God,
and he was there.
Dude.
And then they got evacuated.
He was there?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then they got evacuated a week or 2 after, I forget. But won't make any comments because that's their experience and theirs to talk about. But it was just fascinating. He came over along with another girl within that placement.
Is he from the US? They came
to Hungary. Yeah, they're all Americans and within the program. But yeah, so...
I want to on the pod. Come on the pod, dude. I'm cooking some meat.
Yeah.
I want to hear your story.
He lives in Iowa. He went to Iowa State.
Hey, my parents met at Iowa State.
Yeah.
I didn't know. The only reason I'm here is because Iowa State.
Yeah. It's a good school.
Come on now. Come on the pod.
But yeah, so like in general, my focus of like foreign affairs, international relations and whatnot hasn't been on the Middle East, and I don't want to talk too much about it because I don't know enough. Just blatantly truthful. I don't know. Same with a lot of people, especially now with the election coming up, and they're curious about domestic. Even my Hungarian friends are asking me about what's happening now and all my takes and whatnot.
And
but
you say we're still arguing about abortion.
Yeah. And I haven't really kept up too much on domestic politics,
well,
so
let's
get
you up to speed, shall we? Let me go through my recent memes. Let's do an education through memes.
On
Here, this is it. This is the only meme you need.
Let's see.
This is you're up to speed.
Yep, exactly.
I just showed him it's
thing.
Myth of Sisyphus on the right and left, and it says how it started, how it's going, and he's still pushing the rock up the hill.
Yeah,
he's up to speed on domestic politics.
So,
come on now.
Yeah. But there is one book for all of those to be, all these. Anyways, one relative, sorry, I'm jumping all over the place.
That's what the show's about.
One relative mentioned to me after the invasion, they were like, good, those people deserve it.
It's giving height.
But these are great.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Full circle, though. Bunch of illegals.
That's my favorite. Isn't that the best one on the board? It's great, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, this shit is pretty dope.
I agree.
Yeah.
Liberals are, they don't give a damn about the money that is spent.
They don't. I mean, that's from the liberal himself.
Yeah.
Come sit down.
How's it going, Grandpa?
You could say the same thing about conservatives with
gushy, wushy, gay shit.
Yeah, you could. You totally could.
But anyways,
so good assist.
So once they said that, it's something like what Tala, right? Like, and his amazing take on what he's willing, like, just to show, and his maturity and like talking to people about the issue, right? And I was like, how can you possibly say that when they're literally killing kids, women, and children? Now, of course, the argument goes deeper, right? It's Hamas going under schools, under hospitals. Of course, we understand that. And this is where I wanted to mention this book that everyone should read. It's a relatively good take from both sides. It shows how complex, from a journalist perspective, how complex this issue in the region is, and how far back it goes, and how devastating on both sides it is. And at least this is prior to October 7th and the invasion.
What was the book?
It is called, let me pull it up. Oh, I had it on the tip of my tongue. Sorry, folks.
We're just going to have to listen to...
That's right, baby. Your meat purified me.
Yeah, tell me. Yes, it did.
All right.
No hands on my popular knapsack.
That's what Gaza should say. About their West Bank, they should say.
No hands on my popular knapsack.
Hey, Israel.
Yeah.
No touchy.
Yeah, no touchy. It's called War is a Force That Gives Us Meaning by Chris Hedges. He's gone into like multiple war-torn zones around the world, especially in Israel and the West Bank and Gaza and whatnot. But like his stories are crazy. Like the thrill he sought. Like when you experience war in that capacity, how, I'm not even doing it justice, but like how dulled down life gets after something like that. And it's like a lot of these journalists like fiend for going into those conflict zones once they've experienced it, because it makes you feel alive. And it reminds me of another book called Ambiguous Adventure in that colonialism and culture class. But that book is like it's a narrative of this fictional character, and it talks about how when you are the most close to death, you feel the most alive.
I mean, that's definitely true.
Yeah. And so anyways, but the book goes into what he observed and how complex and how difficult it is for both sides. Like he was explaining, within Palestine, within Gaza, the way that these kids, the dogmas, the mentalities, same with Israel too. You see all these people getting annihilated by Israelis, right? And then they become martyrs. Like it's a part of, and I don't know currently, I'm just saying in the book, but like there's a mentality for these young kids to now become that martyr.
Yeah. And I mean, it makes sense.
And it's just kids getting mowed down at fencings. Like, he talks about these really graphic moments within it where
them running to the fence and getting killed is them
like
being a martyr.
Palestinian kids throwing rocks and getting mowed down, like terrible, terrible things. And so it's a lot more complex than just someone going, oh, well, they deserve it.
Yeah.
Because that's just war theory, right? You get attacked, whatnot. So
I just think my take's a little more ethical. Everybody dies. I mean, it's just more ethical. You don't pick a side. You are the side.
Yeah.
No, it's dumb. It's just a joke, but it's really fucked up, and it makes me very angry actually digging into it, because it doesn't seem like we really, like you said, it seems like Israel is digging themselves in a position that doesn't have reproach.
Yeah.
And that we're kind of co-signing the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. And it's crazy, because when I was listening to Mersheimer, he was talking about Ukraine and Israel, and it's not something I was aware of, but more than likely, if you were to get those leaders out of positions, Netanyahu, Putin, he said, and I don't know the background, the literature on it, but he said more likely than not, you're going to get even more hawkish people in there.
Totally.
Than the Netanyahu and Putin.
Completely.
Could be way more way more into it, which is very concerning. And that's why a lot of people are like, well, once Putin dies out, no, it doesn't end there. This continues. So if we dive more, if you want, it's up to you. But like, Ukraine is the main topic I've been looking into and interested
about. I've done
a
fair amount of research over the last 2 years about this conflict, and it seems to me like, if I'm going to be really reductionary, what happened was we had complicated business ties with our U.S. leadership related to Ukrainian industry. That resulted in some messiness. That messiness caused us to respond in an aggressive way towards Putin's position via Ukraine. Ukraine then gets invaded by advanced, continued aggression towards Russian positions. Russia says that's enough, starts the conflict, and now it basically seems like we're trading US dollars for future promises of farmland.
It's an interesting take. We
are essentially buying farmland in the breadbasket of Europe.
I haven't heard that argument before. It's interesting.
Well, what is our dollars going towards then?
So
what is the reciprocation of these financial mechanisms, if not the agricultural land? So they don't have anything else.
Here's my take, and it's a big topic. So Russia is in a position, right? So it's an autocracy, right? We all know that with Putin, complete totalitarianism, and those terms get complicated of what you're talking about, fascism, all these different things, right? But it is an autocracy. So
I mean, we have an autocracy of the Fed, but continue. Putin,
along with people like Xi Jinping in China, they've eliminated all possible young or oppositional leadership.
Dissent doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist.
Okay.
There's no more opposition within China. We saw that at the most public display of it. I forget when this was, probably like a year ago. I don't know. Recently, when Xi Jinping got announced again as I don't know what they call it, chairman again, right? And they have their whole assembly come into that huge red room, right? And the former president of China stood up and said something, and then he got immediately ushered away. It was something, I think it was criticizing or something along those lines. All his social medias, everything gone. Next day, dude's gone. Dude's capped, right? There's, along with Putin, there's no actual leadership, and this gets very tricky. So in China right now, when you think about the Montana balloon, right? When that happened, I've heard one perspective where that is the most absolute fumble and just joke that happened from China. And apparently, from this perspective, it's from Peter Zeihan. He says that Xi Jinping didn't even know about the balloon. And so that's what happens when you put so much fear in eliminating all your opposition. You start eliminating critical thinking about your foreign policy. And it puts you completely in the dark. And that is a scary thing for the United States with a leader like that, to where they're not receiving complete intelligence. And what I've heard too is China experienced some blackouts. This is what Zeihan was saying. And Biden was the one to inform Xi Jinping of what was happening in his own country. At least from like, so basically what he was arguing.
You know what I heard this week, and this speaks to this type of thing. Joe Rogan had a guy that was like Pentagon security intelligence on, and he was talking about during the Cold War how the United States and Russia had outright agreements on paper that before they were to launch ICBMs in response to what they thought was an incoming ICBM, because they both knew about UFOs, because they both countries had seen so much unidentified flying object activity that they said, hey, we're both going to agree to pick up the phone and give you a call to make sure this is yours. Yeah. Before we say, seriously. So they had that much in the 1950s, that much of a understanding of alien, UFO, whatever. Yeah. That the Cold War was like not, extra cold because aliens were involved. Yeah.
That's crazy.
What? Yeah. Like, so yeah, if you're going to call China to let them know that the internet's down.
Yeah. Within there, but like it shows like so much incompetency within his autocracy, right? And so that's why there are certain perspectives that I have that are pretty contrary to a lot of people. I don't necessarily think, and I debated this with one of my professors, I don't think China's necessarily that big of a threat right now. Of course they can become with Taiwan, or just the fact they have nukes, but their demographics right now are looking so poor.
They're kind of crippled.
This decade, they're going to be done for.
Yeah. Well, we are too.
Yeah. Well, we're relatively, we're not good, but we're stable.
Well, the only reason we're stable is because of immigration.
Yeah. And that's another fascinating thing about the topic of immigration and trying to get
you
need bodies. And so,
yeah, if Americans are going to have kids, you got to bring in people that are going to have kids.
Exactly.
Because guess why?
Yeah.
Taxes.
Yeah. So, but anyways, so like with Putin too, same thing, like the amount of just the fact that if he does get ousted or a regime change occurred, right, it's going to go even worse. More likely than not. So here's how I view it.
Okay.
Russia and
a bigger country attacked Ukraine. A smaller country.
Wow. That's it. But so Putin's autocracy can only remain, his government can only remain if he fills 6 strategic geopolitical gaps. So he's trying to recreate the Russian Empire in general. And these are points within Europe that are just like what we've seen with satellite states, but not necessarily completely the same, but it's his buffer zone so that the West cannot. And he is correct from Peter Zeihan. His takes are really interesting because this is a fight for in Putin's government, but Russia's safety in general.
Yeah.
If they don't plug these gaps, which they've been moving towards, when people say, and I really hate this when people say, oh, well, Biden is responsible for these things happening current day, right? Like, these wars are happening under him, and it's him. It's on him, okay? These are decades in the building of what's occurring right now. You look at...
Yeah, Hunter had to work for Burisma for like 8 years, dude, to like lay the groundwork for this kind of a thing to happen.
But I mean...
I'm serious. But you don't get that kind of agricultural land just passed to you unless you lay some groundwork for a while.
But
I'm just telling you, there's a lot, like, you dig into this shit and it's pretty fucking sketchy.
For sure.
How many people are connected into, like, and Jared Kushner with Trump's administration was the key for Israel's pack of like, hey, this dude's in the family. Yeah. This dude's not going to let our issues go unheard.
And isn't Kamala's husband Jewish? Yeah. So, but anyways, besides the point, under George W. Bush, you had Georgia,
Yes.
the conflict with Georgia and Russia. And then from there, under Obama, you have Crimea.
Yep.
Complete appeasement there. And on top of that, you have the color revolutions in the past 2 decades in Ukraine. And all these different uprisings, different poles of power between America and Russia, and happening within the elections in Ukraine over. And slowly Ukraine forming and, pulling away and going to the West. So, but here's the thing. Number one, Putin gambled that the identity was strong to Russia. They still saw themselves as predominantly ethnic Russian, right?
Right.
Language, history.
That was a gamble from his perspective.
Right. But maybe it was the smoke screen too for what he did. And he also, one Russian academic in Moscow wrote a pretty scathing paper on the pro-invasion of Ukraine that I read, and he mentions the 2003 invasion of Iraq. Phenomenal point to bring up. Fair point. We did that with no UN Security Council. Same thing's happening here. Now, and he made the point, this was a really
Russia didn't even pay Israel to attack themselves.
But he basically said that the only reason the West cares is because they're white people getting slaughtered.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, 100%.
For sure.
I mean,
And
this is very clear.
yeah. And so, but
Yemen's been going on for fucking 20 years.
Mhm.
My entire life.
Yeah.
People have been being genocided in Yemen.
yeah. And
Are they white people? No.
No.
So guess what? I don't read about it every day.
No.
And
exactly.
they still die every day, dude. It's
Mhm.
so horrible.
It is. And so so the 6 strategic points,
Yes.
right, throughout Europe and also on the
buffer
Asian
zone
yeah.
that gives him...
He needs
that-
down near Georgia
yes.
too, and we'll see about Asia. But so right now, Ukraine, for people who think, oh, well, just, and this is a lot of Europeans within Hungary, it's a prevailing perspective, stop the war at all costs right now, which I understand from a pure moral and concerning perspective, but there's a lot more at play. If Ukraine falls, Poland is definitely next on the list. He needs Poland, and Russia needs Poland. And Poland historically has always been that one point that these countries need. Nazi Germany starting World War II with Poland, right? With the invasion of Poland in 1939. But he needs these points. And so now we're going back to Cold War thinking. Biden's a Cold War thinker, right? The one thing
that's for sure.
the thing I do really respect about him is he's been talking about this issue, this topic.
Maybe just cold. I don't know about thinker. I'm going to take it back. He might just be cold.
He's been talking about this topic his whole career. And now he's actually doing what is, in his perspective, is best in what he's been talking about.
That's crazy.
Ukraine has always been the forefront of foreign policy and questions about it.
Has he, in his younger years, was Eastern Europe and this area?
Oh, yeah.
That was his...
He talked
he's
a
had
lot about Ukraine
focus,
and
but...
the importance of it. And it's amazing because you saw Obama, who really wasn't great foreign policy wise. I mean, there were certain huge successes from Osama bin Laden to Jessica Buchanan, very risky operations that he okayed that played very well for him and worked out successfully. But the thing I do respect is that Biden is carrying out what he's been saying. And now, of course, I'm not saying people can say this is right or wrong, but he has a backbone in foreign policy, and he's the only president since Herbert Walker Bush to actually have foreign policy experience and understanding.
Yeah, but that's only because he's so deep state. And Herbert Walker Bush founded the fucking CIA.
Right. So but still, they have all these recent presidents, right? They just have no actual understanding of foreign policy, in my opinion, in general.
Okay, so
they just lack it.
But to say that the playbook necessitates international collusion across industry and government, and that because the playbook says it, and if you don't play by the playbook, you're not an apt international governor, I think that's flawed.
Okay, that's a fair point. And I will say is the thing that's really confusing is like, where do we go from
for
here
example,
with
CrowdStrike? Have you read about CrowdStrike?
Not as much.
Okay,
no.
so CrowdStrike is a company that's contracted by lots of governments around the world for security and
wasn't it with flights recently and whatnot?
So the entire country went down because, and where did, just random guess, where does CrowdStrike servers, all of their servers on Earth, where are they? They're in Ukraine. When did they get moved to Ukraine? Oh, at the beginning of this administration.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's crazy. And CrowdStrike manages the servers that also had to do with Hillary's DNC funded expose or whatever, the Russian Pissgate thing that we went on 4 years during leadership of saying he's a Russian asset.
Yeah.
That was oriented and originated at a CrowdStrike server level in Ukraine.
Yeah.
Like it's pretty it's hard not to think there is some level of collusion between private industry and our leadership, supposed representative leadership, when you line up all of these things.
For sure. And I'm not.
That's where I start to be like, okay, it's way too much of a coincidence.
Yeah. And I'm not disregarding any of that. I struggle with that. Like the thought of I think it's more pragmatic, just to be clear. I think it's more pragmatic to take your perspective and say, it's a broken and flawed rule book. You better learn to play by the wrong rules because everybody else is playing by them, than it is to say, fuck those messed up, unethical rules. We're going to do it differently and lose differently. Yeah. Well, I mean, within any international affairs, right? Any funding that comes from the U.S., there is going to be corruption. At some levels, somewhere, someone's going to be getting a cut. Same thing with all the drug cartels down south, right? People are making money off of this, which is why certain actions aren't being taken. Now, I guess what I'm getting at is the broader idea of, and this is where like the more historical side. So following World War II, the United States, Soviet, Russia, right? They emerge, two powers, right? But the United States, through the Marshall Plan, begins to buy off most of Europe and rebuild Europe through U.S. taxpayers. And on top of that, you then have an agreement where the U.S. is going to write foreign policy, security policy for Western Europe, and also we're going to write the Constitution in Japan, and we're going to write their security policy too. And we're going to control all of that. Meanwhile, we're going to have our entire Navy patrol the oceans for trade, globalization, for you guys to do what you want, right? And to spark these economies.
Yeah, we'll keep your economies safe and allow you to do trade and grow.
Yeah.
Economic development.
You just have to let us write your security policy.
I mean,
because of Soviet Russia, right? And so this is where the long build-up.
Yes, this was a battle for hegemonic power post-World War II, right? Between us and Russia.
Yeah.
Right? UK had a hegemonic power. Probably World War I is a better. It was up for debate, World War I into World War II.
So this is fascinating, not to change it, but this is fascinating. So I did like a whole year just focused on the British Empire and its decline.
Yes, I remember.
And we talked about this.
This was like your undergraduate dissertation, right?
In history. And so basically, a lot of people think, and this is where you should read Mearsheimer. It's not as long of a book. But Mearsheimer argues that there's no such thing as global hegemony, and there will never be, because of the power of stopping water, or I forget the phrase, water stopping.
Mm-hmm.
The U.S. can't, even with its its capabilities, its military, you're never going to see a world hegemonic power because of the difficulty of military strategy with water. That's why the United Kingdom was never invaded, has never been invaded. And that's why the U.S. is so what he calls is the U.S. in modern history is the only regional hegemony.
Yeah.
And they are right now.
Yeah, I'd say that's, I could
regional
get down with that
hegemony is much clearer and a better way of putting things, in my opinion, than talking about hegemonic power, like in general.
Well,
world power.
Here's where I think the soft power aspect of it makes a stronger case.
Yeah.
And especially with the internet.
Yeah.
So I think I can get down with that argument before 2002. But now with 2002, you have people in East Asia that just want to be American. Mm-hmm. They want to eat hamburgers, and the soft power is so much more pervasive than it used to be, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And the argument within the book too, he makes really, so originally I would be like, what do you think is the most important branch of a military? What do you think?
I would probably say probably the Marines, like the first response, like first on the boots on the ground, is what my initial gut reaction would be. Not
what I was expecting. I typically, when thinking about the U.S., I'm like the Navy. The Navy is the most important. They do just about everything, right? But within the argument, he talks about what's the most important, and it's about armies going across land. Like when you have to traverse water, it is a whole nother game. It is not very successful ever to try to do that. So he makes arguments where it's called offensive realism. Basically, the world is in an anarchy state at the international level. Mm-hmm. There's no higher authority that can completely come in.
Well, there is, but they're underwater and they're aliens and they won't show themselves. But continue. Yeah. They move underwater at 400 knots.
Yeah. For instance, like in general, the idea of the UN is a very beautiful idea, but it does not have that power to check powers, as we've seen with Ukraine.
Well, they're
as
trying
we've seen with
really
Iraq.
Hard to get it to there.
And we're gonna, even the EU now, stepping up there for the first time ever, they've created the, military budget defense spending. But anyways, the argument is really interesting in the fact that because it's an anarchic system and there's no central power to check within the global landscape, countries will always be in a state of trying to take advantage of the opportunities they can get.
Yeah.
Especially the great powers, right?
I mean, that makes sense.
And so you get these different like regions of hegemony. But
so where's the edge of ours?
Ours is the entire Western Hemisphere.
Okay.
Because there's no country that can check us here.
Not even close.
Nowhere.
Not even close.
Yeah, not even close.
Pull up,
USA. Yeah, but yeah. So it's a fascinating argument. I'm still reading it right now, but it's also a depressing one.
I mean, what do you think of my core tenet of like, there's no reason that an American should work? We just need to get over this one ethical bound of enslaving the world, and we've already got one foot in the water, and we know it's cold, but we just need to jump in.
I mean.
Because we're already doing it.
We are, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't try to change
extra steps. It's the same thing with extra steps.
Well, I mean, you go back to all these different points of like colonialism and like exploiting nations around. And to be fair, the United States in general, you can talk about imperialism with the United States, but colonialism, largely the U.S. was strongly against.
Yeah, we haven't gone out of our way to do it. We could have totally taken over Canada now, 3 times over.
To be fair, we tried to do it earlier on with the Philippines, and we did successfully do it in like Hawaii and some of our outer posts.
Let's not talk about Dole tonight.
This was like,
isn't about Dole.
This isn't necessarily modern U.S. history.
Do you know about pineapples? Do you like this? I'm going to tell you this because you're going to enjoy this. Do you know about pineapples? You know that pineapple in Connecticut costs like $5.
Okay.
Do you know that the only place on earth that they grow pineapples to any type of scale is Hawaii?
Really?
A pineapple takes 2 to 3 years to flower.
Wow.
1 fruit per plant. The plant takes 3 by 3 meters, or like 3 by 3 feet, like a meter, square meter to plant 1 pineapple for 3 years.
Okay. Wow.
Tell me that should be $5 in Connecticut, and I'll tell you that you don't know anything about economics. Like, it's so clearly an industry. It's an example like these mall shops. Like, you go to the mall and you walk by, there's no reason that they don't do enough business to maintain this fucking store. Pineapples don't sell. They should be $35 a pineapple for how much work it takes to get. Yeah. No. But at each step, there's someone that's being, they're advantages are being taken at every turn to give you that pineapple in Connecticut for $5.
Yeah.
So if people weren't across every level of industry taking as much as they can at every single step, you don't get to go to the grocery store and buy that for $5.
Yeah.
So there's this evil beauty in capitalism too.
For sure. And now I think looking at the US and even tying into like more domestic issues of like mental health, especially among men.
I think you should focus on the young women.
Yeah.
The data shows. Yeah. Oh yeah. I thought young men were the problem. No. It's the young women. Yeah.
I mean, in general, everyone's getting fucked up.
Yeah, everyone's getting fucked up. But for over 50% of under 25 females in the United States to be on psych meds, that's a problem.
That is a problem.
Those many people don't have that deep of issues.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think they've been worrying about their issues way too much.
Yeah.
And I've been there. I've worried about my issues too much and gotten in a hole.
Yeah.
For sure.
Same.
And that's probably not beneficial.
No.
It's at some point it's self-masturbatory.
Yeah.
It's pity masturbatory.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's I mean, I think of course you can play in technology, social media, everything, but yeah, I mean, I think it's also like the mindset that it is to a certain extent a beautiful and important thing. I'm a fan of people getting dessert, right? Like in a philosophical term, people who put in, who put in that merit and put in that work should get dessert for sure. There should be somewhat a scale, but I believe that like the US has gone so far extreme capitalism, especially post COVID, that and our spending, you can say all these things about social welfare, all these different things, but the spending doesn't matter anymore. And so
the government so clearly, remember when I told you about MMT? You were still in high school and I had taken this class. I was a couple years in college, and I'm like, Connor, they're trying to tell me that that inflation doesn't matter, that they can just print as much money as they want, that they don't need our taxes on a federal level to spend, that the government doesn't need our taxes federally to spend.
Yeah.
And that's what we've seen in execution the last 8 years since then. Is exactly that. Yeah. Is that they do not need money from us every year to spend and print money.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, just this mentality that's been built up, especially, you could say post-World War II with the baby boom, with suburbia, all these different things, but also, especially when I think about identifying a decline in the United States, I think about the beginning of the Reagan era. I think about, the defense spending along with the tax cuts and whatnot, and also played into Herbert Walker not winning re-election. No new taxes, but oh shit. We need taxes because guess what? Right now we're spending too much, right? And it's amazing that Clinton was the last U.S. president to balance budget.
See, the funny part is though, if you look back, they were trying to keep up a facade that we hadn't completely taken away the meaning behind our money.
Yeah,
they tried to keep up a facade since '74 when they went off the gold standard. They were responsible for those first they had to get 25 years of, hey, we're not lying to you, even though we are.
Yeah.
Push down Americans' throats. They had to propagandize the financial system enough to allow the steam to just go. Mm-hmm. And you see it just going now, right? Completely.
I mean,
so.
Yeah,
but there's that sense of it, I guess, too, a little bit, maybe.
It's also like, I mean, thinking about our parents' generation, quite possibly the worst American generation in our history. I mean, like, and not necessarily at their fault, but to their fault, too. Just the overconsumption that we're still in right now, too, but, like, not leaving. There's so many factors to it, thinking about income. And when we were talking about housing, like income, housing prices have gone up. I think it's 400% compared to income.
Yeah.
Rise. So it's just like all these, just the overconsumption and the overenjoyment of probably the most prosperous era in U.S. history.
Yeah.
80s, 90s. Could argue 2000s besides a few,
And the funny thing is, it was dumb, too. They didn't make any cool stuff. After the 70s ended, and I know lots of people said this, but they didn't make cool shit anymore.
Yeah.
Like, they stopped doing drugs. They stopped thinking differently. They stopped being unique and eccentric. And They cogged themselves down. They cogged ourselves into a little fucking rat machine, a little rat cage. And now all of us as young rats in this rat cage, all we can do is go to the fucking rat vending machine.
Yeah.
And you bet your ass we're going to go to the rat vending machine for dessert because we're in a fucking cage.
Yeah.
And we see it. So we're going to go to the vending machine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to get frustrated with other people going to the vending machine, which, let's be honest, the problem with consumption is, hey, we got to stop fucking going to the vending machine.
Yeah. Yep.
But we can't look around ourselves in this cage at this point, at this stage of the decline, and say, hey, stop going to the vending machine.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to tap you and say, what the fuck are you doing talking to me? We're in this cage, man.
Yeah.
You really don't want me to go to the vending machine?
Yeah.
Go fuck yourself.
True.
And then there's that combative nature of baseline humanhood. And that's not where we want to be.
No. And it's just like if you talk in terms of general statistical peace around the globe, following World War II, we have seen what John Lewis Gaddis has coined as the long peace. And obviously that stopped with Ukraine in general. Of course, I'm not saying there aren't conflicts around the world in between that time span. There are atrocities still committed, but in general, you're talking about actual deaths. Statistically, it has been the long peace. And
the
now,
big part is the powers.
Yeah.
Right? Typically, while we've had these, other things throughout, there hasn't been two powers, since World War II. Two major powers haven't come at heads. Yeah. It's been a genocide here, a genocide there, atrocities here, atrocities there.
Within, more third.
Yemen, Rwanda. Yeah. The list could go on and on, but
great powers have not fought great powers since World War II.
And now
we've done proxies, but
now we're funding kind of power against the power.
For sure.
We're not even on boots on the ground.
That's the Cold War for you.
Bingo.
Proxy war, which is how it needs to occur in a nuclear environment, which is really interesting. And I want to dive into literature on this, but perspectives on if a nuclear button will actually be pressed. Because what we've seen in Russia with Ukraine actually invading, I forget the name of the region.
The Donbass.
We'll call it, Ukraine invading just recently, this last month.
Oh, yeah.
Russia proper.
Right.
That was a line that Russia drew, and they said, we will use tactical nukes if something like that occurs.
Really?
So now the entire landscape in international affairs is, well, they're bluffing completely. We don't take it legitimately anymore. Of course it could happen. But now that opens up much more considerations of using U.S. bombs, European bombs, and sending them into Russia proper now. From the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians have them, right? Not using it defensively anymore, but aggressively and offensively. So that's going to be a very interesting thing to see. I don't necessarily, I need to be more up to date on current reports of what's occurring there. But
it's tough because it's a bit of a battle. You're gonna sacrifice mental health to be up to date.
Yeah,
I found
yes.
I mean, 100%. Personally, I can't be up to date unless I'm sacrificing some mental health
for sure. And I think as I go into DU now for masters, I need to be doing things like that. And of course, it's what I'm gonna be doing in the master's program. But
how long is the program? 2 years.
2 years. Yeah.
Nice.
So, and it's going to be fascinating to see what happens. Daily, it'll change what the outcome could be. And originally, most academics are Ukraine can't sustain regardless. And it's going to fall. It just looks like, what are we going to do after? But who knows if that's completely true. The world of geopolitical predicting is a tough business, and you don't
imagine setting
completely
if
know.
There's a Vegas sports book for international conflict.
Dude,
setting those lines would be a hell of a fucking difficult algorithm to work out, man. Yeah.
So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. I think.
I wonder how the AI PC does it. PhD does it. Sorry. It would setting global lines on.
If it's even, I don't know.
I mean, that they kind of do that, right? Yeah. The international banking community kind of sets global lines on conflicts, right? They kind of bet on who they want to back.
They need to, for sure.
Don't look into it. It's kind of fucked up, but all the Federal Reserves around the world, they kind of bankroll all the war.
Yeah, for sure.
Fun fact.
For sure.
All of it.
Yeah. So, anyway, it's fucked up. But in the larger scheme of things, I think what it's really coming to, in my perspective, especially in Ukraine and with China, is where do you draw the line against authoritarianism? And where do you draw the line against these autocracies? And lately, we haven't been drawing the line until Biden, in my opinion. And he's been taking a very hardline stance. Like we said, I struggle with the idea of if this is correct to be funding. Of course, I understand the fucked up nature of it, right?
The origins can be questioned.
It is challenging, but it depends on what are we going to set as our principles going forward.
Yeah.
And I think when you look at especially Hitler's rise and the lack of foreign policy privy or whatever, or understanding of what should have been done, they just got out of World War I, so you don't necessarily want to rile up the region again, because Europe is the most war-torn continent in human history. But basically, when do you stand up to people, right? Like, where are we going to draw the line before we go into a conventional? And what I was saying, I'm interested on the literature because there are some people who think conventional warfare between great powers is very possible and plausible, even in the age of nukes. And
like I don't have the battlefield, hot war with troops. No, I don't think there's going to be troop wars anymore.
I don't know. I mean,
they've got too much money to put into drones.
That's true.
I mean, we see the shit in Ukraine.
And to just fund another country.
Yeah, but I have a trouble believing we won't just, contract the Congolese to go out there for us.
Yeah.
I mean, they've already built our phones, so I have trouble believing we won't just contract them to...
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are U.S. troops in Ukraine right now, guarding the embassy. There's a SEAL team there. We have, 100 or 200,000? I know it's a big difference, but we have hundreds of thousands of troops on the border with Poland. We've deployed what are called THAAD systems, terminal higher altitude defense systems.
Yeah, those things
to knock down nukes. And that, if that were to ever happen before Ukraine, we
would have nothing.
Absurd. I mean, the issue of Trump trying to deploy them.
So the THAAD system is essentially a mobile Iron Dome. Correct.
Yeah, it's those trucks that prop up, and then it's like, to my understanding, it's an electromagnetic missile that cripples it midair.
But they also require those large, long range. It's like a satellite plane that flies over the region, and that allows for communications between.
But
but those it's like creates an iron curtain wherever they want it.
Hopefully, I mean, we don't know. It's classified, but
I mean, they've got fucking.
But if they're using them, it's got to have a certain rate of success, and that they've tested. But you need it in the region. So, like during Trump, he was considering. I believe it was during Trump. He was considering deploying them within Southeast Asia. And so that was a huge issue with China and being in the region of potentially knocking down their, what you would call their serendipitous first strike, right? And so that affects the balance of power and how people are going to play in the international realm. And this book does a really good job of talking about that. I think it's called the serendipitous first strike and defense capabilities. And also, if there is going to be a potential global hegemon, they have to achieve nuclear superiority.
Significant superiority.
Yes.
Like that.
They have to develop technology that eliminates the threat of an opposing nuclear arsenal. Nuclear supremacy.
Okay.
Like you can still knock out whatever you need. Or at least you can still have relatively lower casualties.
Defensive nuclear supremacy is, I guess, maybe a better way for me to think about it.
Yeah.
It's like, because you're not worried about, I can kill anyone at any moment. It's that I can't get killed.
Yeah.
By anyone.
Yeah. So.
Wow.
I mean, it's just the way I'm thinking about it right now, too, is like democracy.
I'm going to call this episode More Moore Hegemonic. More Hegemonic.
Do it.
I think that's an app name for the app.
That's good. It's good. But it's going to be interesting. I just think well,
I'm excited to talk to you while you're going through the program and learn more about as you dive into specific issues and can educate me and educate our audience. Yeah.
And I just like, I don't know. I mean, right now, if you're thinking from a very, very Western perspective, and what I was talking about with drawing the line, like, where do you let democracy fall? And of course, now you can argue against this too with like Vietnam and the fucked up things we've done supporting dictatorships to try to push back, prop up democracy, right? Like, no, we've propped up dictatorships. But if you are talking actual moral ground, hopefully, of what someone might try to pursue in foreign policy, I do think democracy is the best current system we have, which puts it all up into question, you know? So where do we draw the line is my point, and where are we willing to go to where this doesn't erupt into an actual full-blown global conflict?
Well, I'm glad, let me tell you, I'm very proud and happy to see your continued development as a guy and,
Thank you.
And a person and a learner and a human.
I appreciate that.
You know, I'm busting your balls when you tell me that I'm getting a little more liberal. You say you're getting a little more liberal, and, you know, I'm busting your balls if I'm giving you shit, because it's good to change and develop and embrace new ideas, and to claw, like, remember Interstellar? They had that quote at the movie, like, claw at the dying of the light. Like, we as young Americans have to claw against the dying of our humanity.
Yeah.
And and slipping into NPChood.
Yes.
We must claw at every turn to not let ourselves become compliant and complicit into an easy and soft world.
Yeah. We have to try.
We have to.
And that's the idealism of, like, we just have to. We have to give it a go. We have to give it a shot. And these next few decades are going to be incredibly tough. And what I was saying too about our parents' generations, they're scot-free with this stuff. They enjoyed some of the best moments for certain segments of America, certain demographics of American history, and now they're at an age where they wouldn't be deployed in a war, right? And like,
and I've got a few spines who don't come for me neither.
Yeah,
because I'm not deploying. But
they're just like, you know, the quote about like hard times create good men.
That's fact.
Strong men.
Soft times, easy times create soft men. Soft times
good
create
men
hard
create
times.
Easy times.
Yeah, easy time creates soft men. Soft men create hard times. Hard times create hard men. Hard men create easy times. Easy times create soft. Yeah, it's a vicious fucking paradoxical cycle.
And now we're in, I think, a new phase of that where our generation is going to have to do something.
We're going to have to be hard.
We're going to have to be hard.
Because these
hard humans,
soft world around us ain't gonna do it.
Things are gonna change.
Amen.
Especially manufacturing and the issue. We didn't even get into this, but what Ukraine poses for manufacturing bases and globalization as a whole. There's a lot of talk about the end of globalization. So
I'd be down.
Mass scarcity.
Sign me up for no more globalization.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm tired of getting viewership from Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
Don't watch my show. This is for Americans.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to get you out of here. This is our new hiding device. This is a cane my grandfather Eddie made.
I love it.
And so it's our new hiding device. How tall do you stand physically? Would you remember what you were previously hiding on the show? Because I think
you
were
hided
hiding, right?
Yeah, you hided me. And Christian.
Yeah. Okay. Do you remember what you hided? I don't even know. I'd have to go back and do some research.
Because you actually do feet and inches, right?
Yeah.
I think you gave us...
You're both probably the same height, because I was too much of a weakling back then to...
Six...
Probably 6'6" or something.
You said 6'7", I think.
All right. Well,
I don't know.
I'm going to go with 6'9".
Oh,
this guy's got a big heart.
That.
He's always growing.
Thank you, brother.
Like
likewise.
Grinch. Don't let it pop too big. Myocarditis is a real thing. Did you get vaxxed? Anyway, fuck off and be well.